Hi, welcome back to Deep Images, and we are continuing our incredible series on zombies as part of our Halloween horror slate. And just wanted to say real quick before we get into it, if you guys could drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to reach this magic number of 1,000 subscribers. We're a hair away from 500, so we're going to try to get a little more aggressive about this stuff and, get our stuff out there. And the algorithms are not always kind to smaller creators, so help us out when you can. We appreciate it. Um, Other thing is, with us today originally for this session was going to be Mark Baranowski, who's been a recent addition to our show. By now, you've probably seen all his stuff, and we also use his music at the end of some of the episodes. Mark's having a lot of personal challenges, so he's going to take a kind of an indefinite siesta from the show, but he definitely wants to return, and we hope it's sooner than later. But we also hope that he and his family are safe and healthy, and that should be the first priority there. So, marksman, shout out to the marksman.
Shout out to the
I
Marks.
promised him I'd give him a shout out. So, um, we're going to talk about some zombie films, a whole wide range of zombie films because there are. Um, and I'm going to start with Mr. C.F. Roberts. I was wondering if you could do the more well-known of the two that you chose to start us off strong.
Okay, well, this kind of has a good little tie-in factor, so
Cool.
we'll kind of get going with this.
All right.
Uh, Later on, hopefully, if things go as planned, you'll hear a review of "Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things."
Yes,
But
we
I
have.
am but I am going to tie this in kind of nicely with a movie that came out a couple of years later, and it is from 1974 by the same director, Bob Clark. It's funny that he put out two movies this year. One was the better known of the two, Black Christmas, but the first one, or I don't know if I can say it was first. I don't know which came first, but it was kind of another collaboration with the Children Who Shouldn't Play with Dead Things crowd. In fact, several of them appear in various roles here. Um, and it's called Death Dream, aka Dead of Night.
Hmm.
And this was written by Alan Ormsby, who played the titular Alan in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. And his wife at the time, Anya, plays one of the supporting roles. This movie stars just a great powerhouse performance by John Marley, who you would recognize from chiefly The Godfather. He's the guy who ends up with a horse head in his bed. He's also kind of a great sideman early on with John Cassavetes. He appears in, I
Oh.
think, at least a couple of his films.
Yeah, he's in the
Or
yeah.
faces at least. Yeah.
He's definitely in
Oh
Faces,
yeah,
yeah.
he's great in Faces.
Mhm.
But and he delivers a fantastic role. This movie is almost like I go as far as say it's kind of like a kind of a Vietnam era update of the Monkey's Paw, and somebody wishes for something they really want, and they get it in the worst way possible. And
Sounds like a lot of relationships I've been in.
yeah, yeah, and
Just kidding. Sorry.
I hear you there. I hear you there. Uh, but 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 the Brooks family have a son, Andy, who goes off to fight in Vietnam, and he's killed in Vietnam. And so what happens? They're all sitting around, gathering around for the dinner one night, and uh, they receive news from a local officer who's a friend. Pretty much, the telegram informing them, this Department of War telling them, yeah, we regret to inform you that your son has been killed in Vietnam. And Charles, the father, and the daughter, the titular soldiers, younger sister are sad and they're crying and they're inconsolable. Uh, the mother takes it to a whole other level. She freaks out completely, won't accept the news, and then runs up to the attic where she lights a bunch of candles and sits in a rocking chair and is found by her husband just kind of rocking back and forth reciting these litanies, and it's real obvious she won't accept, the fact that her son is dead,
Hmm.
which, it's a tough pill to accept regardless.
Right.
And overnight, a miracle happens. It's a very nasty miracle. You see this trucker riding toward the town, and he's got a hitchhiker on board, and it's a soldier. And he's just kind of very monotone, very deadpan, stares straight into space, and stops at a coffee shop, stops at a truck stop, grabs a cup of coffee to go, and that's the last you see of him. Then Andy turns up at the door. Andy, the son who was killed in Vietnam, and everybody just welcomes him back. What was that all about? It was just some crazy, silly mistake that the State Department made or whatever.
Right.
And and Andy is not quite the same. He's just kind of really just not speaking a whole lot, not answering a whole lot, uh, not able to elaborate a whole lot. He just kind of has this dead-eyed smile through a lot of it. But
Do you think I can't I've only seen it once. Do you think the family is writing it off as a term they didn't have back then, but so I'll use the term they had back then, shell shock, PTSD?
yeah, possibly. I don't know. I'm led to believe maybe they didn't even, because shell shock and PTSD. I don't know. That went to a whole other level in Vietnam, and
Hmm.
when the soldiers came home racked up with that, no one knew what was hitting them, and they were all just like, and I think that's a lot of what this movie is about, to be honest. Yeah, they use zombieism, you know the zombie effect to kind of, act as an allegory for your kid coming home from war and they're not the same anymore.
Right, right.
And so, they really don't know what's going on. They think the family they're just glad to have him back.
Yeah.
Charles, the father, is the one guy who's really kind of picking up on the fact that something's real wrong here. And as time goes on, the local kids are coming over. They're like, "Hey, man, did you kill a bunch of gooks or whatever?" And they're just,
Yikes.
well, I don't think they say it quite like that, but it's more or less implied.
Right.
And Andy's kind of just smiling but deadpan, sitting in his rocking chair, and like the family have an old dog who kind of, you know, sees sees Andy finally come home, but he's not reacting well to him. He keeps barking incessantly at him,
The dog
biting at him,
knows.
attack. Yeah, and the dog turns up dead, and then the trucker who brought him into town is found dead, and then the family doctor who's examining him and looking at him, also turns up dead, and a lot of people are turning up dead, and things just kind of snowball from there. And after a while, you kind of got the impression it was just this whatever prayer or whatever bad wish, whatever bad headspace wish his wife made, just resulted in Andy coming home just zombie this zombie who's just going around killing people, drinking their blood, killing someone else, drinking their blood, and the results are tragic, pretty much for the entire family, and
Hmm.
and a lot of other folks around them, and so. just as I imagine, just maybe be what Ormsby and Clark were looking at the time, which is just families being ripped apart by folks coming home, guys coming home who just weren't what they used to be.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good allegory.
Yeah.
Doesn't it fall to the dad to kind of deal with Andy ultimately?
He kind of does, but he kind of doesn't. In the end, he just the toll is just overwhelming, and he winds up blowing his
Okay.
own brains out.
Does anyone blow Andy's brains out?
Andy, I think, in the end, commits suicide. Basically, it's he and the mother.
Oh, okay. The mother outlasts the dad. I couldn't remember that part.
Yeah, they're careening down the road. I think the police are after him, and everybody's chasing him. I think at one point the car ends up catching on fire, and so he's blowing down the street in this big boat of a car, which is in flames, and crashes through the cemetery gates and ends up landing in a fam. He ends up just crawling over and falling apart and dying on the family plot where he has scratched his own name into the tombstone.
Damn.
I'm forgetting. I'm trying to remember if the mother dies in the
This
crash.
is
I'm pretty
very
sure she does.
this is very EC Comics like I always thought.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. EC Comics with a touch of what was going on at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, who wrote the original Monkey's Paw story? Do you remember? Because I can't remember their name.
Oh,
I should. I've never read it, but of course it's such a trope. It's
yeah,
been.
everybody knows it.
Yeah.
And same here. My entire family have read it except for me.
Oh, okay.
Uh, but yeah, you kind of learn about it by osmosis.
There was an EC story where this guy I think okay, so he dies and he's bonded with the dog. And I think it's based on a Ray Bradbury story. It was adapted for an EC comic story. I don't remember the story's name. And basically the dog's like sniffing and always wanting the guy to come home. And finally the dog goes out and the owners think he's looking for bones or he's lost. And he comes home and basically he's dragged this corpse back and the corpse is undead and he's, back and he's, all shambly and rotted. And the dog's like, here he is. I thought it was hilarious. And maybe it wasn't intending to be hilarious, but I think Jack Kamen did the art on that, which was you would expect Graham Ingalls to do the art on the shambling, rotting, putrid corpses, but big EC Comics fan, if anyone that
Oh
watches
yeah,
hasn't figured it out by now.
yeah.
Um yeah, this is right up our bailiwick. So uh have you seen this movie, Chris?
No, I always wanted to see that, but I never got around to it. I'll have to queue it up now, though.
Yeah,
But
it's well worth
great.
it's well worth checking out.
Yeah, it sounds really good. And Bob Clark was a great director. He was
Mm,
always making B movies, but he was always better than that, in any genre.
Yeah,
very influential. It's really weird that really he's mainly known for Porky's.
Yeah.
yeah. Or isn't he
Well, he
the one
also
who did
did A Christmas
Christmas?
Story.
He
Yeah,
did
Christmas
Christmas
Story.
Story. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably what he's more well known for now. Now, in the 80s, Porky's was more popular than A Christmas Story, but history has reversed it in a bit right direction.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I mean he helped found the American slasher movie. Well, he was Canadian, the North American slasher with Black Christmas.
Yeah,
Very important movie because that I can think it was the first. I mean, there's a couple that come close, like Silent Night, Bloody Night from 1972. That's kind of a American proto, but I think Black Christmas was the first kind of North American popular movie that used the body count thing, which of course was instigated by Mario Bava, um, and can be traced back to Agatha Christie and Edgar Wallace. We've had that talk on this show a few times.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's pretty wild. I bought the Anchor Bay DVD. I had been reading about it for years. When that came out, I snapped it up, and so I've seen it a couple of times. I sold that one a while back. It's one one day I'll upgrade if it's on Blu-ray. I don't know. Do you know if it's available on Blu-ray yet, Chuck?
I honestly don't.
Seems like that's one that maybe Lustig still has the rights to since no one else has put it out. There's a
Trying
lot
to
of
think
his.
of whether we have a copy. We might, if we have it, we might. Yeah, we're both. I remember when we watched it a few years ago. We're both so wowed by it. It was just kind of like usually when we're like that, it's like we've got to get our own copy.
I've seen it
And
on. It's available on Plex for people who are on Plex. You can watch it there.
yeah,
Uh,
I
Plex
got.
is.
I saw it on Shutter. It's actually on Shutter too right now.
Oh, okay, okay. Good. Thanks for letting us know that.
But
Um,
yeah, just it's streaming as per usual. It's like okay, we may have a copy around the house, but I've got to go kind of chase it down.
yeah, streaming's convenient. Um,
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. Yeah, and yeah, children shouldn't play with dead things. We're hoping for a review of that in this session. It might not be in this episode, but hopefully it's coming up. The
Stay tuned
Stay tuned.
and
Um,
like and subscribe and
mo-
click the bell for notifications.
most deaf, and I also wanted to say that that some of that cadre of people, not Bob Clark, but the others made Deranged with Jeff Gillen directing.
Ooh,
Did you know that? Deranged about Ed Gein, Ezra Cobb, the Ed Gein
That's great.
surrogate.
Yeah, it's great.
It
yeah.
is
I'm
great.
trying to think. Is that the one? I know there's one that has several people from SCTV on it.
No, this one had like
Okay, this is a different
Roberts Blossoms
Yeah.
was
one.
a
Okay.
star. I don't know any of the other actors. It was Alan Ormsby co-wrote it, and some of the people who worked on Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things put it together. But for whatever reason, I think Bob Clark had some affiliation, maybe helped produce it. I don't know. But Jeff Gillen, who I'm not familiar with, really directed it. I used to know the guy who had the used to have the exclusive North American rights to Deranged, and he put it on videotape. His name was Michael D. Moore, not to be confused with all the other Michael Moores. And actually, Mark Baranowski, who's like I said, is not with us today. He and I, Michael D. Moore directed a music video that I helped produce that me and Marksman are in.
Oh
And
wow.
he gave us copies of Deranged that he had
Cool.
literally chained off of 16 millimeter. He was able to put out a pre-record that hit a lot of stores like Borders in the 90s, but he never renegotiated the digital rights because I think yeah, MGM, it reverted to MGM because I remember MGM had the double DVD that had Deranged and Motel Hell. So Motel Hell has come out on Shout Factory
Yeah.
Blu-ray, but Deranged is either getting ready to or has just come out on Blu-ray, but I don't remember who's doing it.
Cool.
Um,
CF, I think CF was thinking about an Ivan Reitman film called Cannibal Girls.
That's it. I
That was the
think.
one with full
oh,
of SCTV people. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
I
cool.
still have I still haven't seen it yet. So
I think it has John Carradine, who we've established is in every other movie ever made.
right.
Channel favorite, John Carradine.
Mhm.
Good evening. We're back with Deep Images, and we are still covering zombies. We are beating a dead corpse here. And tonight we're going to talk about a couple of classics. Our newest, Rhiannon Clark here is my co-host for this segment, and our newest recruits, Nick Mays here, is going to tell you about a couple of classic zombie movies that um, I suggested he watch, to see what he thought, get in the frame of mind, and he's just going to give him his take on it, and we're gonna, go from there. So, what do you think, Nick?
All right. So basically the two movies that I was doing is The White Zombie and Astro-Zombies. So to me, I'm not a watcher of the older style movies. They kind of tend to pop up on riff tracks and stuff like that. So I'm not always that guy, but I do like the way that the movies that you recommend, and they don't disappoint me. So with the White Zombie, that was the first one. The only name that I personally knew was his face, and that was Legacy.
Yeah, Bela Lugosi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Lugosi. Yeah. So when it comes down to it, his character was in the background, kind of, so to speak. But basically, the movie starts out with a couple, going to get their honeymoon plans taken care of and things like that. And then after that, they get there, they end up meeting somebody who has a house that offers to let them stay. So they end up taking them up on that offer. But as you watch through the movie, you kind of get a understanding that this person didn't really offer for them to come over so that he could have them as friends, but mainly just her. He wanted her. So it's more of a, I can't say love story, so to speak, but it does have a sense where you're kind of on a, uneased at certain points just because these movies were in the 30s, I think,
Mm.
something like that.
That was 1932.
32, yeah. So it's not a silent movie, but there's a lot of silence, and I think that was what stuck out for me the most is the way that they used lighting and visuals, and it didn't focus on the conversation so much.
Right, right.
There was a lot of conversating in the second movie, the Astro-Zombies, but that didn't lead to the results that you got led to with the first one, with lack of dialogue. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Because I usually, will throw out a Kevin Hart reference or something from a movie, you know what I mean? And that you don't really get that with White Zombie.
White Zombie's pretty dour and tight. I mean, it's the silence thing you mentioned is interesting because yeah, they were just coming out of silent movies. So some movies, especially horror movies and atmospheric movies, would have these stretches where there's like no sound whatsoever. And later that became like unheard of in Hollywood movies.
Yeah,
Like Dracula from the year before, which made Lugosi a big star. Dracula has some scenes in the beginning where it's just like it's totally quiet, like super darkly lit, where Harker's first meeting him, and then they talk a little, and you're like, oh, there's no music, there's hardly any sound, and it makes it creepier.
That's
yeah,
spooky though. That's spooky AF
yeah.
when like silence, isn't it?
When it works, it's gold. So
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think that was to me, and then I mean, I guess I have notes and things here, but when it comes down to it, like that's really one of those kind of things where do you really want what you get type of story. So I guess one of the key points that sticks out is that he says now that he's got her there, he wants to have her, but in order to get her to be mindless, so to speak, that's where the entire movie is at a
To
certain
under his
point.
control type
Basically, basically control is what it is. That adds to the dark, interesting part of the entire thing. There's, like I said, there's not a lot to talk about for me personally, but when it comes down to it, the silence, the control, the thought of that happening to somebody that those types of things are what stick out to me about White Zombie for sure.
What did you think about Lugosi's character? Because he's kind of become an iconic horror character of his own, and his character's named Murder Legendre.
Yes, yes, I noticed that as well. I would, when it comes down to it though, he kind of wasn't a big part of the film. Like
Not enough, I didn't think.
the
Yeah.
fact that he wasn't a big part of the film fills in basically all of the holes the film could have had, I think, if
Hmm.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because you kind of get a sense that because of me, it's 30s movies, so I notice all these things like with Astro Zombies as well. It was where they have all these little switches and circuits and things, and you're like, that's not going to plug into a brain, and it's like 3 inches big, but it's fine, though. It's fine because that they were using these things, these techniques to make the movies make you feel something that you really don't get now, in my opinion, when you watch a newer age movie. It's kind of just the murder and the eating and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't really give you any kind of a fear. And I think that it was more creepy, so to speak, to have these two kind of go back to back when I watched them.
Well,
Because
let's talk about Astro Zombies because now we're fast forwarding about 35 years. So I believe it's 1967 or 8. So that's Ted V. Michaels directed that. And it's one of his most well, it might be his most well-known movie, but what I know it was made very cheaply. What were your impressions of that one?
yeah, well, that was one where we've got the mad scientist, basically like a Frankenstein type of character, right? And he's always fiddling on bodies, so to speak, and they've got the same type of pull out the drain pan and do the blood transfusion type of stuff that I heard you guys talking about on your reviews as well. So they use those things to get the point across, and even though it appears cheesy to me now, it probably was good quality.
Well,
I'm not trying to be
it
disrespectful.
wasn't as realistically done as Reanimator or Day of the Dead because it
Right.
was older and less budget, and
Yeah.
so
And I think both movies, they did great with the budget. I don't think that I planned on watching those, but because I was aware of them, I think it was rewarding. So, um, but
Did you feel
basically,
that they were kind of crafty? Did you feel like they were crafty, like the sets and stuff,
I
the
think
way
that
they
the
put together?
people that wrote it and put the stuff together were crafty. And I don't know if it was one of those things where I can say that the actors and performers, use their abilities the way I would think of something like a Jack Nicholson or somebody doing something that that's them as a role, as a type, like a stereotypical character.
mhm.
So it seems like they might be able to go into different movies or did go into different movies with these examples, whereas we have more of a typecast society in now at times, in my opinion. We've got Kevin Hart's and we've got Jack Black's and we've got all these people that we associate,
Personality. So yeah,
yeah, with the style of the movie that they're gonna do as an actor. Whereas, mainly I think we're talking about
Are you
writers
saying
and
that they're more
directors.
introverted? Are you saying that the kind of the actors are sort of kind of more introverted and letting what the piece that they're in more speak,
I
tell the
I
story
think
than
they
the
they let the
personality?
directors guide them, and they said okay more often, from what I could tell, than if there was somebody that is, like the people that I mentioned from
yeah.
nowadays.
Well,
So
in
I
my,
think that
were you gonna say something?
I,
Sorry.
I was thinking about it. I was just saying, like, I mean, that you're not going to be able to take, Tom Cruise and make him dynamic anymore. You
Right,
know,
because he's playing Tom Cruise in every movie, and that's what people want him to play, and that's all he wants to play. And he has so much money and power and influence that he's never going to be forced to do anything else.
yeah,
And that's a very good point about Hollywood. So, basically the actors are serving the directors. Now, in my opinion, just my opinion about cinema, like pure cinema, what you're describing, especially White Zombie, that is pure cinema, where the dialogue and story might have some problems, but if you're sucked into it and it does what it literally, it's a moving picture that
right,
incorporates sound and photography, it can be a great movie. And a lot of horror
right,
movies are great movies without great scripts. In cases Astro-Zombies, there's a bit of humor and camp in it, and some people like the riff tracks kind of guys. They do make fun of movies like Astro-Zombies a lot, and I get some of it, but some of it, I think they miss the point that some of the humor in Astro-Zombies and Ted Michaels movies is purposeful,
right,
and it has stood the test of time. I mean, Astro-Zombies only gets more popular. It's on every streaming service there is now. Um, and I did want to mention a star who is the main star that we know now through cult movie fandom from that movie is Tora Satana. And I think a year or two before that, she did Faster Pussycat Kill Kill with Russ Meyer. And that's kind of her image to most people, this like big busted, like burly, strong, exotic looking woman with long black hair. In real life, she was, Japanese, I think Japanese and several other races combined, and she'd been a stripper. Um, and exotic dancer. And in Faster Pussycat, she's very kind of buff and she looks like she could kick your ass. She's tall. In Astro Zombie, she's more feminine and a little bit less clothing. And probably a little, and also she's in the Doll Squad by Ted Michaels too, which came after, which I love, which was ripped off for Charlie's Angels. They actually took the premise and the main character of Doll Squad and made Charlie's Angels, and they never. Ted Michaels tried to sue him, but I don't think he had enough money to to succeed. But now it's kind of acknowledged that yeah, it was. But not that there's much to Charlie's Angels. I'm talking about the old one, not the Drew Barrymore. But not there's much to it, but that was the whole point. I mean, it was a real simple premise. This one guy gathers these women together And Sabrina is the brainy one. She's not like the sexy one. And there's a sexy one, which was Tira Satana in that one, you know. And that's kind of what they did with Charlie's Angels. Simple concept, but it's kind of Michael's idea. Um, but getting back to this movie, I think Tura is really great in this and really funny and makes a good villain. And I think a lot of people do seek out this movie just to see her. And I don't blame them, you know. I mean, I get to see her all day long, you know. I briefly knew her online, and she shares my birthday, not my same year. And after we got a little acquainted, we wished each other happy birthday every year until she passed away. So rest in peace, Tora Satana, brilliant cult star. She was good to her fans. She appeared at conventions. Um, but yeah, I'm glad you covered this movie. Is remind me if you know or you took notes because my brain's just blanking out. Isn't John Carradine in this movie? Isn't he the scientist, the old guy?
Uh, there's we're talking about Astro though, right?
Yeah,
So no, I'm sorry, I don't have that. I'd have to look it up.
I should remember that. Carradine, we've established on this channel, and many people have, that John Carradine was basically in every other movie made for about 30, 40 years. But it's like, there's John Carradine. What the hell? Didn't matter what kind of
He's in
movie it
everything.
was, you know, there's John Carradine. But he did have quite a bit of roles from the beginning of his, almost the beginning of his career in horror and sci-fi. I mean, he played Dracula in one of the early Universal Draculas. Some people hate his Dracula. I'm fond of it. Um, but you know his sons are more famous, especially David Carradine, Kung Fu and Kill Bill. But well, that was pretty cool, man. I'm glad you got some good impressions from those movies. I hope people go out and check them out. They are both on Tubi, and that's I hooked up Nick with them, and I'd be glad to hook all of y'all up with it. Just go on Tubi and look up White Zombie and look up uh, ASTRO-ZOMBIES. But as Nick pointed out, if you go on Google and look up White Zombie, you know, you're going to get a lot of Rob Zombie's band first. So put in White Zombie film and film 1932, even that would help you find it. But that is, they did name their band after that, you know, with a heavy band, you know, Black Sabbath, White Zombie, you know, that kind of thing. So, all right, we're going to wrap up, and I really appreciate everyone watching. Before we go, Rhiannon was wanting to share some ideas with you guys.
My only idea is that if you'd like to like, subscribe, and share, we'd absolutely appreciate it. And we appreciate you and your feedback and engaging with us because, you know, the sound of one hand clapping in the forest, you know, we want to hear what you've got to say. It's not all about us, it's about you as well.
Right,
So,
right.
you know,
It's not all about it. It's about the show. It's about the movies and just the whole idea of uh, deep images. We just basically like check out these moving images and we go as deep as we can into them. And it's our interpretation. Your interpretation may vary. We try to give you as much facts as we can, but ultimately, you know, we're just diving into them. And I do want to say to brag that the channel does dig deeper into a lot of these kind of movies than almost any channel of its kind on YouTube that I have seen. So I hope we can continue that standard. And if you guys keep supporting us and subscribing and liking our videos, then we'll do that. So thank you. Rock on.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives, and the light that they gave as they burned and then died.